Hi, I'm Rob Fee, Managing Editor for Demand Gen Report and Marketing ID. Thanks for joining me for today's chat with Lisa Arthur, Chief Marketing Officer at Teradata Marketing Applications, author of the book Big Data Marketing, and a veteran of technology marketing. Lisa, I appreciate that you found some time to speak with me. What I'd like to do today is get an update on any new trends you've seen since publishing Big Data Marketing. So with that in mind, let's start. You opened your book by stating that every member of the C-suite agrees big data is an issue that needs immediate attention. The problem is very few know what to do about it. Since writing that, have you seen more executives understand the issue and create a plan?
It's a great question. A couple of things come to my mind. One is it's been almost a year since Big Data Marketing was published, and I see that along with a lot of industry publications and associations continue to focus on the awareness and the education because there's still a lot of questions yet. But I do think we've made some ground in the year, Rob. And let me just talk about what my data points are as a data-driven marketer to make that claim. One is that when I wrote the book, I was hearing from CMOs, what's the roadmap? How do I get there? And we did a survey that went out to 2,200 marketers. This is at the end of last year, and 71% of marketers were planning a big data implementation. And so the appetite is there, but that framework was missing. So in my role, I meet with CMOs almost weekly, whether I'm speaking or we have a program called Top to Tops where I meet with them. They absolutely now get it. They understand the value. And now what they're focused on is, how do I get there? What are the things I need to do? Because it's a journey, not just a project, and not something that's one and done in 3 to 4 months. So that's what I really see.
Can you provide any specific examples of companies that you feel really get it and are doing a good job in this aspect right now?
Oh, not only can I provide you a couple names, I would point our audience to our website where they can actually watch videos of some of these customers. One, and I mention them in the book, and all profits of the book go to the American Red Cross, but the American Red Cross clearly gets it. Their CMO has a vision with their CEO of One American Red Cross, and they know that data-driven marketing and tackling that data hairball is critical to their success. And so there's a great video on the American Red Cross. There's also some other great brands like Hertz and Procter & Gamble that since the book has come out have given us some insights about how they're improving the customer experience through the use of what I would say is all data: big data, small data, enterprise data. So those are the three I would point to.
So where do you see the state of the C-suite now, months after publication?
The C-suite is aware. The C-suite is talking amongst themselves about how they make this an advantageous versus a disruptive event. And they're looking at the talent and the staff that they have to understand, is this the go forward, or do we need to make some tweaks in the organization? Do we need to make some tweaks in our overall strategy? So they're still clearly working through it, but I think much, much, much more aware and educated than a year ago.
So have there been new concepts or metrics introduced over the past year that supplement big data marketing efforts?
Well, I mean, some of the ones in the book are still coming to fruition. Predictive analytics for the campaign or database marketer, right? Not having to go and build complex models, but having that at your fingertips as you're modeling and really trying to predict the outcome of a campaign or a consumer or a business outreach. But we are starting to see a big appetite for what I'll call digital marketing attribution. I touch on it briefly in the book, but it's on the minds of everyone, and it's how do I know the golden path of my online consumer to be able to replicate that or to make it better. We're seeing forward-thinking companies, none that I can mention now, but there's a lot of pilots on this phase taking a big data analytic platform, layering on lots of data sets, whether that be from social or the web, to indicate attrition and or potential revenue. So those are what I would say key forensics that are front in mind today, even more so than they were a year ago.
So the crux of your book listed 5 marketing steps: get smart, get strategic, tear down the silos, untangle the data hairball, make metrics your mantra. I almost stumbled over that one. And process is the new black. Where do you see most companies at today? Which step?
There's two steps that come to my mind. One, and most marketers and companies are here, which is get smart, get strategic. That means having that vision of what the brand is going to be and what is the associated customer experience or buyer's journey, customer journey. We hear those talked about a lot. But really mapping that out, and then out of that, developing an analytics strategy, a data strategy, an organizational and a technology strategy. So that's where a lot of work is going today, because they know their old strategies and the old playbooks aren't going to work in this new data-driven economy. The second one, and this is where a lot of work is going to, is untangling the data hairball. I mentioned the 2013 data-driven marketing survey that we ran. A lot of the stats are in the book, but one that comes to my mind is quite disturbing. 18% of marketers have a holistic view of their customer or their buyer that they are communicating with. That's horrible. That's less than 80%, and that's after almost 2 decades of vendors and technology vendors promising CRM and 360-degree view. So there's a lot of effort, a lot of cross-pollination of collaboration and organizational sweat, if you will, focused on untangling that data hairball, because you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you can't have the data and the insights to execute on it, it's going to fall short. And those are the 2 steps, Rob, I see the most focus on today.
Just to follow up on what you said, is there anything you can point to that you would maybe attribute that 18% to?
As far as why we're there,
Yeah, exactly.
well, I think it's several things. One, if you look at the marketing landscape, and an influential blogger, Scott Brinker, does a great job of putting this into one graphic. If you haven't seen it, all the marketing technology. Marketing has created its own data silos and a lot of fragmentation. You layer on top of that the fact that we still have enterprise silos of data, right? Service data from sales data, transactional data, never the 3 shall meet in many companies. And then you layer the marketing problem on top of it, marketing charged with being the voice of the customer, a key outreach to consumers to communicate. And that's a real problem. And that's actually where the term hairball came from, is it's kind of, duct taped together systems that don't talk, data that's in silos across the world, and marketers sitting there going, it's not that I don't have data, I have tons of it, but it's everywhere and I don't have access to it. So I think that's really at the heart of why we're where we're at today.
So, of the 5 steps, which one do you think has proven to be the most difficult for companies to meet?
Absolutely, without a doubt, untangling the hairball, the data hairball. And the reason is because marketing can't do this alone. It needs to be a cross-enterprise effort, a cross-business effort. If it's a small to medium-sized business, they still have the same problems too. And it's because of the complexity of the problem, and that it's cultural in many respects, that the organization needs to come together and quit debating who owns the data and just make the data holistic. So that's the one that's the most challenging.
So, big data marketing encompasses a lot of different topics: behavior tracking, predictive analysis, segmentation, or social data. just a few examples that come to mind. Over the past few months, have you seen any specific concepts gaining any traction and providing real benefit to marketers?
I think that's a great question, Rob. I see a couple of key trends, and one of them starts with an I, and it's integration. And it's integration of data, like we were just talking about. It's integration of processes, integration of systems, right? So that the world of our customer is very complex today. We shouldn't make their interaction with us complex, and unfortunately is in many industries and in many geographies. So really looking at integrating all of those together so that there is a seamless platform for interaction, there's a seamless platform for insights, and there's a seamless platform to get the work of marketing done. If you think about it, and I find it curious. I've been in technology for, gosh, longer than I want to admit, 25 plus years. And marketing is the last function to really integrate itself. We've seen integration with sales, with HR, finance led the way. But marketing is the last, and yet it's the largest variable spend for most companies. So CMOs, their teams are waking up, and it's not just about the outbound anymore, but it's also how do we bring it all together, and how can I manage marketing to be more agile, to pivot with my consumers in the market. So that's the biggest thing I see. And then I think on top of that, the other trend is that there's been a lot of claims made over the years. We talked about one just a little bit ago, right? 360-degree view, but yet marketers don't have that today. So, a real dive under the covers of what am I getting when I pull together a marketing automation platform or a system of record for marketing, because there's a lot of claims out there, and at the end of the day, the software is an enabler. It's not a panacea. And so understanding what's under there and really looking at the processes and the people on top of that, and making sure that this can really scale and be a real world solution is another one. People are looking way deeper under the covers.
There seems to be a lot of events popping up around big data, such as MarTech, which was about a month ago, and a number of big data innovation summits. What does the existence of these events tell us about the adoption of these concepts?
Well, I think first of all, I'll look at the full event industry. And if we think about 2008, 2009, events were not as predominant. So I think it's awesome to see a return because it's a great way for education and awareness. And I think that's why we're seeing so many, Rob, today, is there is an appetite to understand it. There's an appetite to look at what people are really doing, not just in theory and academics, but real world examples of where big data and insights are improving the customer experience. So I think this plethora of events is critical, as is the work of organizations like yours. Hopefully books and campaigns like we've put out with big data marketing and our data-driven marketing efforts, all with an eye to educate and aware. And I think that for the plethora of companies out there that are supporting the events and attending the events, educating consumers and buyers, the critical thing is we need to make sure we're delivering on the holistic customer experience for marketers, and that we're looking at a journey, not this is just a project that's going to solve world peace, because otherwise we're going to fail those buyers short, and they won't get a second chance, right? If their competitor comes in and disrupts them before they're able to figure out, that's a real problem. So I do think there's an imperative of the vendor community to support and educate with that depth and that real world how-to.
Did you get a chance to attend any of those events?
Yes, last year I spoke at the Marketing Science Institute Big Data event, But I didn't get to go to MarTech. I was out of the country, unfortunately. But I have attended some, and what I love is you get a combination of marketing executives, marketing practitioners, and insights and analytics. Some people will call them quants, but it's those conversations between those unique talent sets that's sparking the art of the possible.
Let's talk about the Chief Digital Officer for a second. You've written in the past about the importance of hiring a Chief Digital Officer. Why do you feel like this is an important hire?
I believe that a chief digital officer is important today to help organizations cross a bridge when the divide is too big. What do I mean by that? Well, if you think about, and I'll use e-commerce as an example, when we introduced e-commerce, there were e-commerce executives. There were separate business units. And what they did was they hyper-accelerated a brand's entry into e-commerce, right? Because there was focus and there was dedication. I think there's all the upside there of a chief digital officer for an organization. The downside and the slippery slope is that it can't create silos. It needs to bust the silos down. And so what I do see is there has not been a huge appetite for chief digital officers this year. I'm not seeing it in the circles that I'm talking about. But when it is, it's looked at as a bridge, a way to hyper-accelerate knowledge transfer and initiatives, but not to build the silos we saw with e-commerce.
So I'd just like to ask a follow-up question based on that, more based on how a Chief Digital Officer or CDO would interact with the CMO and how that role would differ from the one traditionally occupied from a CIO.
That's a great question, Rob. What I see from the chief digital officer positions I've looked at is that, one, these executives are digital natives. They eat, sleep, and breathe all things digital, digital metrics, digital experiences, far deeper level than either a CMO or a CIO would have. Certainly both of those other C level positions would have experience with digital. I don't know of many of us today that don't, but it's not at that deep level. The second thing is then they need to be able to take that and tie that across with the CIO and the CMO to make sure it's integrated into the rest of the channels in the mix, right? Because you can't have a digital experience be completely different than you do offline, and unfortunately we see that. So it's really a blend of digital experience, technology, and metrics, and then relying and working with the CMO who's looking at the overall customer experience and the connection with the brand, and the CIO that's bringing business strategy to life through technology to execute across the board. And I think therein lies that caveat that was from your prior question, is the chief digital officer can't operate in a silo, or else it will create more fragmentation and ultimately not serve the consumer or the buyer that the brand needs to serve.
So are you aware of any other organizational shifts, or would you recommend any other organizational shifts as a result of big data?
I get asked that a lot, and I'll share with you what I share with other executives, which is it really depends upon the organization. Some are looking at adding all the talent they need in marketing because they need to have the control, and the organization requires them to have the control. Others are working on a matrix approach, cross-pollination. The American Red Cross that I brought up is a great example, right, where they brought on a data strategist. It sits in IT. The CMO and CIO work together to hire this talent, but they dotted line and work for marketing. It's a great example of a solution that works for their culture. I think at the bottom of it, the biggest organizational imperative is identifying the cultural blockers and then how you're going to get around it. How are you going to get past it and over it? How are you going to finally execute to deliver on that consumer experience? And the reason I say that, there's one brand very large financial service brand. And they shared with me that for 6 years they've been working to try to solve the data problem, but culture's gotten in the way. So I think it shows the imperative of every organization dealing with it differently.
So the next question I think follows up a little bit on some of the things that you were just talking about, but one of the keys you mentioned in the book was collaboration between departments and minimizing turf wars. Have you seen companies take action in these areas in the last year? And if so, do you have examples of companies that are getting it right?
Well, the one I just mentioned, the American Red Cross, is one that's really tackled it over the last year and is getting it right. They have been rolling out against their initiatives of One American Red Cross, an integrated platform, integrating marketing and chapters, integrating IT and marketing to work together to solve for it. And I think it's a beautiful example of how to tear those silos down. Another one that comes to my mind, and there is a video on the website, and also this particular executive will be presenting at a virtual event on October 8th, is Procter & Gamble. Now, if you think about Procter & Gamble, they're huge, right? Their revenue is bigger than some emerging countries' GDP. It's massive. And they sell to billions of consumers every day and every year. And so what they did was they took a journey to put together what they call One Consumer Place. One Consumer Place is a fictional address, if you will, for every one of their consumers. And they've launched an initiative across all their brands. They started in Asia. They've now brought it to the US, and Europe will follow, where they have introduced everything from microsites and communities to aggregate sites that are talking about things that their audience cares about. And they have integrated over 500 CRM touchpoints. And they've established the same key performance indicators across all the brands so that they can, from one brand to another, share success, share lessons learned, and help build up every brand within P&G. So when you think about tearing down the silos, I can't think of a more complex organization on the planet than Procter & Gamble, but it shows when there's someone focused on the consumer experience and there's an integration, like we were talking earlier, of systems and data. It can be achieved, and it can be achieved across multiple brands for one company. So I think it's another great example.
So Gartner's quote of CMOs spending more on IT than CIOs by 2017, it's a pretty famous quote. In your opinion, is the industry on pace to meet that prediction?
I absolutely believe that marketers will spend more on technology than their IT brethren, and I do believe we're on pace. I think that where that stat gets a lot of debate is from a lot of IT professionals that I talk and meet with. And their concern with that is that it's giving marketing the kind of the pass, if you will, to go make their own decisions. And that brings me back to what we've been talking about, which is it's critical not to go it alone, not to continue fragmenting and complicating our marketing solutions, but to unify them, work with IT to do it all with the focus on customer experience. We know that marketers right now are focused on retention and acquisition, and that technology is the way to do that. And so that, along with a heightened spend, whether that be in retail stores or it be at a bank branch, is absolutely a maniacal focus for CMOs. So yeah, I think we're on pace.
Let's bring the CFO into the discussion then. Has justifying the spend gotten easier or harder to the CFO, and why?
I think it depends on each CFO and each CMO, and if they're able to calculate what Gartner will call the return on marketing investment. Not just that I spent $1 and gee, our sales went up and therefore that dollar did that, but actually drilling down into the demand and the value that that's bringing to the organization. CMOs that have that data are having way easier conversations than those that don't. Also, what we're seeing is that when you work with the CFO proactively, instead of sitting there with sweaty palms going, okay, I'm going to get asked this question to defend my budget, but proactively involving them in building business cases for new technology to drive results from a spend, or in the way that we're measuring campaigns to make sure it's coming back to demonstrate value, that's also helping. So it's both a cultural and a data and technology requirement, but when those are in place, it's absolutely a much easier conversation. I think we all still have some work to do there, though, because I don't think it's universal yet, Rob.
Okay. So we'll wrap things up with this last question. There's been a lot of discussion about the role of the marketing technologist. Where do you see that discussion heading?
I think the role of the marketing technologist will become more and more important. And the reason I say that is, as I've worked with global brands, I often see someone with a title of CRM in their title, or customer experience. I'll also see people that are IT with marketing after their name. And a lot of these are doing exactly what the marketing technologist is bent to do, which is understanding the business value of technology and how to incorporate that for scale and for competitive differentiation. So I think we're going to see more of those and less kind of ad hoc titles that are doing the work, but they're doing it with a different name, because I already see it vibrantly being practiced in many, many global brands.
That's great. Lisa, appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Enjoyed our chat.
Same here. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the audience for watching.
Absolutely.